In this video, I'll be talking about the new LEGO DeLorean in ways that nobody else has seemed to talk about yet. I mean, yeah, it's a great LEGO set, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, no one's comparing it to an actual model of this DeLorean, or its old LEGO counterpart. So how well did LEGO actually do? I guess we'll find out. Back to the Future has got to be one of my favourite film trilogies out of all of the film trilogies that exist. I probably like it on the same level as the new Spider-Man trilogy, so I was pretty hyped last year when we found out that there was a rumour going around that we were getting a new DeLorean, especially in the creator style, considering the Ecto-1 was my favourite set of 2020. My dad introduced me to these films and I've loved them ever since. They're the perfect combination of time travel and story, not really favouring one over the other, but core elements of the film that make up an incredible trilogy. And I know people say that 2 and 3 aren't all that, but if I'm honest, I think I like 2 and 3 just as much as the first one. And rewatching the films before this review means I got quite a bit to say about this LEGO set. And just before we jump in, I'm going to do this review slightly differently because I genuinely think this set is perfect. I think it's better than the Ecto-1, and in terms of a LEGO set, I think it's a 10 out of 10 and you should go and buy it if you're a fan of the films. This review is going to be more tailored towards how is this compared to a DeLorean time machine model, and note where the LEGO set differs from the actual car and some of the details they skipped out on. But like most of my reviews, I want to start by talking about the minifigures. It's great to see that they finally gave us brand new variants of Marty and Doc, rather than reusing the same figures again from the Ideas set like they did with LEGO Dimensions. Doc finally gets the yellow suit that he wore at the beginning of Back to the Future 2, and I really like the detail used all across this figure, especially that face print, using the silvery chrome printing to give him those glasses that were so iconic from the end of the first film. As for his alternative face, I really do like this, however I wish there would have been a more neutral, because we haven't had a neutral face from Doc before, because we've either had happy or this frowning look, but more on why I think that is in a bit. As for Marty, I think this is the real reason everybody is obsessed with these figures, considering his leg prints wrap around to the side and he's wearing the Nikes. Although not officially licensed by Nike, this print is fantastic, and although it looks a bit strange from the front, and I think it would have been better if they had used dual molded legs, but those side printing is just...
it's truly amazing.
As for the torso, I do love the jacket. The texturing on both sides has been done very well, but the face print is honestly the worst part about this figure. They've used a young Han Solo face, and I just don't think that looks right. And considering that we had a unique face print for the Ideas one, I would have much rather they reused that face print, as I believe it looked a lot more like Michael J. Fox from the time. These figures are placed on a stand, which if you ask me, could have seen better days, but at least we got a stand and figures, unlike the Ecto-1, which didn't get either. Which is good to see LEGO learning from their mistakes, because everybody under the sun complained that that set was fantastic, if only it came with some figures. But considering the Batmobile also comes with figures, there's a possibility that that set could have come with minifigures at one point, but due to the set being released so early in the Ghostbusters Afterlife development, they were unfortunately cut from the set. Not the case here though, I'm really happy we got brand new variants of Doc and Marty in LEGO form. But moving on to the set, like I say, as a LEGO model, I think this set is perfect. It fits in nicely with the other cars, the shaping is almost uncanny, to the point where people have double-taked whether this is even LEGO or not, and the detail on the back is just immaculate in my opinion. I really like how the designer has used metallic silver for the flux bands around the sides. People who have made mocks of this car usually tend to use black or white because it's something different than light bluish grey, which is the most accurate colour that you could use apart from the oil drum silver or the flat silver. Granted, LEGO do have the luxury of building new pieces. This new piece on the bonnet here does really give the correct shape to the bonnet, where most other people have used plates and tiles to try and get that same look, making their builds look a bit more blocky than this one. Continuing with Back to the Future 1 stuff, we also get a box of plutonium that fits neatly under the hood. I'm glad to see that there is a spot for it under the hood, but unfortunately there's no plutonium accessory unless you count these trans orange tiles within the box. And although the sticker details do make this box look really good in my opinion, I do think it's slightly on the smaller side, but any bigger and it wouldn't fit under the hood. But here's the point in the review where we get really nitpicky, because there are a few details that are missing that would make this LEGO model better, but please remember that in no means am I complaining about this set. Again, I think it's great. And that turns my head to the interior of the car. Opening up the fantastic gull-wing doors, you can see the details that they've put on the front of the dashboard look very good. However, there are just a few things that I do want to point out, and again, although not complaining, would have been nice to see included in this vehicle. For starters, the digital speedo seems to be missing from the top of the dashboard, something that you may not have been able to include considering the windshield probably gets damn close to that dashboard at that point, but something I definitely noticed was missing when I was building the model. Maybe this could have been represented as some form of cheese slope, with printing on the side similar to how we saw on the Harry Potter CMF book, or maybe a sticker detail where you could put on the side whether you wanted it to be at 0 miles an hour or 88 miles an hour. And maybe that would have fit in there, but it's always something we can look into in a mods video in the future. There are usually also wires all over the dashboard. Again, something that might have been more difficult to include, but considering we've done the wires around the car, which look fantastic, definitely something I think the designer could have thought about when designing this model. Another sticker or print that would have been great to see is something for the steering wheel. The time machine has 3 distinct buttons on the front of the steering wheel, and considering we got things like the plutonium gauge, I don't think a sticker on the steering wheel is too much to ask for. But all of these things add up, I guess. The time circuits look great with that printed keypad at the bottom, but unfortunately the red, yellow, and green numbers are all done with stickers. However, I must say the way that this section is built, giving that 3-layered structure, looks great. Moving on to the time circuit switch that is down by the gear lever, it's great to see these details represented. However, the lights on the roof don't seem to be there. There are some printed tiles towards the back of the car probably alluding to these details, but if you ask me, are just not the same. And that moves me onto the back wall of the car, where unfortunately there is a lot of missing details, mainly because I think the flux capacitor has moved a lot more forward, probably to get that light up function in, which by the way is the only time I will say that a light brick has been used in the correct way. This feature is absolutely amazing, and if this feature alone is what got rid of some of the other details, I'm perfectly happy with that. But for transparency's sake, I will say what's missing. Behind the driver's seat, there is meant to be an LED panel, also known as the Christmas tree, or the SID, which is meant to light up as the time machine goes back in time. Unfortunately, on the LEGO model, there is absolutely zero representation of it, and that's slightly annoying because I believe there is space for it. The seats look very reminiscent of the actual DeLorean seats, but unfortunately there is no carpet on the floor, meaning you can see some of the mechanism where it goes from normal mode to hover mode. This could have been fixed by simply tiling this off. There is also meant to be a fire extinguisher here, and on the other side behind the passenger seat, there are also meant to be some round details that are unfortunately missing. Same behind the time circuit switch, there is meant to be a gold box, which is unfortunately missing off of the LEGO model. But again, that's just because the flux capacitor has been moved forward so we can get the light brick behind it. Speaking of the flux capacitor, I think it's an excellently designed piece. As take the old model for example, this piece was used to make out all the detail on the flux capacitor, whereas on this new one we have a full-on glass piece with a grappling hook element on the inside to represent the details of the flux capacitor. Now moving on to the back of the car, where I think most of the details are actually pretty good. All of the correct wires seem to be represented on the back of the car, including these little ones even connected to the side vents. If you have the plutonium chamber on the back, you can see that it's represented in this really nice piece using a Technic round brick, a round brick vent on the top with a yellow stud with the pin on the top inverted in the center. My favorite bit about the plutonium chamber is it uses these extra pipe pieces going straight into the back of the car where the flux capacitor is housed, which again is accurate to the original car. Say if you have Mr. Fusion on the back, some of these details are removed, however the Mr. Fusion piece itself looks fantastic using this red skeleton piece as the hinge for the chamber, where inside we can find a beer can and a banana skin, exactly what we put in the Mr. Fusion at the end of 1/beginning of 2 of the film. The sticker detail of Mr. Fusion looks great, however I will say the top of the chamber is meant to be black instead of white. Some people may even argue dark bluish grey. This might also be a good time to tell you that you do get a hoverboard in this set. It's a relatively simple build using a pink 2x6 tile, with a sticker on top, and again this is designed to go underneath the hood of the bonnet, and is probably the reason that it doesn't have an extra slope on the back like it's meant to, as you can see from this screenshot of the film. Like I said before, the flux bands going around the car are represented in this fantastic drum lacquered silver, and underneath these metallic silver or drum lacquered silver pieces are trans blue plates, giving the slight hint of blue that the time machine has when it's traveling through time. You can see this slightly better on the front bumper of the car, considering it's a bit more open underneath those really accurate headlights and that nice DMC printed tile. But moving back down those flux bands, you can see that these nice red canisters are also represented on the car, which is very accurate, red being on one side, blue being on the other, with these nice green canisters also represented in sand green on this model, being accurate to what we see in the films. And these brand new wheel prints really do make the DeLorean look like it has that iconic texture that the real wheels do have. The only thing I will say is that the rear tyre on the back of the DeLorean is meant to be ever so slightly thicker. Now I understand that LEGO probably didn't do this because of their wheel conversion, which we'll talk about in a second. Again, something I didn't really think needed to be there, but something to point out. The rear of the car is also the correct shape, which is very difficult to do in something like Lego bricks, and I appreciate the use of 1x1 clear tiles to represent the complex look of the DeLorean's rear lights. I also like how these rear vents are accurate in the sense that they hang slightly over the back of the car, and these rear flaps sticking out ever so slightly from the main vent assembly. The model unfortunately does not feature any sort of steering, but that's only because the wheels can convert from normal driving mode into hover mode. Some 1x2 clear bricks are provided for getting the DeLorean off of the ground, but if I'm honest, I haven't seen a single person on the internet use them, so I don't think I will either. The hover conversion is a fairly complex mechanism and is activated by this red lever on the bottom of the car. Unfortunately, the bottom of the car is something I have a bit of an issue with. I know it's not really something that you can help, but it would have been nice to have some extra detail underneath the car considering the hover conversion was included on this set, and the only real thing it needs on the bottom of this is a few trans green studs. But with that big red bar in the way, I'm sure that's the reason they didn't bother doing any detail on the bottom. Moving on to Back to the Future 3, we get a brand new set of wheels. These ones are the white wall tyres that we see in 1955. After that version of Doc manages to put the time circuits on a Pepsi Cola box on the hood of the car, a feature that is also represented in this model. Flipping over 2 bricks on the bonnet allows you to add studs to this, so you can attach this box to the hood of the car as well as these belts that go around the edges. The car at this point has unfortunately seen better days, but I'm so glad we did get a representation of Back to the Future 3, even if it wasn't my favourite moment from that film. Now, the popularity of this set has been absolutely insane. As of the time of filming this video, as far as I'm aware, it's still sold out in every LEGO store and across LEGO.com, and I know speaking to LEGO employees that a lot of these things were made. If you ask me, this just goes to show that Back to the Future is definitely a theme that should be here to stay, and hopefully with this set selling so well, the future of Back to the Future sets looks bright. I would personally love to see a more updated version of the time machine, considering that old one was completely abysmal in terms of shaping. I think it would also be a good opportunity to give us a 1955 version of Marty and Doc, so we're not repeating figures, and it's something I'd love to see the Speed Champions designer have a crack at. Whilst we're at it, I'd love to see a version of the clock tower done in LEGO form to go alongside a minifig scale Back to the Future car, and whether this would be 2 mini sets or one big D2C, I don't really know, but it's definitely something I'd like to see, as well as LEGO giving us a Western version of Marty and Doc. Considering we've had Back to the Future 1 and 2 figures now, I think it's only right that we should get the 3rd version as well. I could see them doing this by introducing the Time Train, a great one-off train set like the Crocodile Locomotive that you can flip between the Time Train and the one that pushes the DeLorean at the end of the 3rd film. This could be a big set that gave us Marty, Jennifer, Doc Brown in 2 different suits, Clara, Jules, Vern. I don't think these sets are too much to ask for. Now that the building rights are back in LEGO's hands, I think a set like this is needed, and I know we've just had a perfect set and I'm already asking for more, but LEGO should clearly see that there is definitely an audience for these sets. And I know I pointed out a bunch of flaws with this model, and there's some I plan to take on in 2 mods videos that you should definitely be subscribed for, one coming out in literally a few days. But throughout all of these problems, there's still not enough things for me to mark even 1 point off of this score. This is a 10 out of 10 set for any Back to the Future fan. I hope you enjoyed this review, and you should check out some of the mods I did to my Ecto 1 version so I can have these 2 80s cars next to each other.